everybody, JC here with another T&I toy review, and today we're going to take a look at the new DC Collectibles New 52 Supervillains Johnny Quick figure with Atomica. Now this is basically the evil version of Flash, who's part of the crime syndicate, who is currently can be seen in the current Forever Evil miniseries going on in DC Comics. And I gotta say, I'm really loving what I'm starting to see from DC Collectibles with these figures and the articulation and detail and everything. We saw, with the Batman Arkham Origins figures in my previous reviews, and continuing to see vast improvements with articulation and everything with these figures as well. So I'm really loving what we're seeing here. But anyway, first, before we get to articulation and all that, let's take a quick look at the packaging. This figure comes in your pretty standard type of DC Collectibles window box packaging. You've got the DC Comics and the Supervillains logo up at the top, and also up at the top we have a little Crime Syndicate logo as well. And then the figure's clearly displayed in the window box packaging so you can see what you're getting. And then you've got the name of the figure down below. And for this one, we've got red and black highlights on the packaging to match the character. Then on the one side, we have pictures of the figures that are included in the set, which were sculpted by Gentle Giant Studios. It also tells us that Johnny Quick here measures in at 6.75 inches tall. Then on the other side, we just have a darkened in image of the character, and then on the back we have a thumbnail image of Quick along with a brief bio, and then a look at all the other Crime Syndicate figures that are going to be released. Now right now, this week, Quick and Owlman were released, the basically evil version of Batman, which we'll be taking a look at probably tomorrow. But the other figures in the wave have not been yet released. I believe Deathstorm should see release later this month, and then the other three should see release next month. Alright, so let's get this open and take a look at the figure inside. Okay, so here's a look at the figure outside of the packaging, and I really gotta say I really like this figure a lot. Just the paint details and sculpting and everything just are really nice. It looks like it came straight out of the comic book, and then I really like the added articulation that we are getting on this figure. The only downside really is it just makes me wish that we had seen this kind of articulation on the regular Justice League figures like the New 52 Flash and such. And I really actually kind of hope, even though I hate having to rebuy the same figures I already have, I kind of hope that we see the DC Collectibles go back and maybe redo those figures with these body molds and these articulated articulated points and stuff. But before we get into the articulation, first just go over, he's got some really nice details. His head, he wears this funny cone type shape helmet with the lightning bolts. Now the lightning bolts are soft plastic. Now I will say, like, coming out of the package, like, this lightning bolt got kind of bent and was a little warped. So you want to be maybe a little wary of that, but for the most part, I think it looks pretty good. And he uses, they use basically red metallic paints for the red portion, for most of the red portions. And then he's got some like browns mixed in on his shoulders and forearms and down on his boots and stuff, along with the yellow trim and then the yellow on the boots. But the metallic red really stands out nice, and so does the yellow stripings and stuff. So I really like the detail on this figure as far as the paint apps. Now one thing I will note is, at least on my figure, there are some nicks on the paint, like here on his chest here area. He's got this mark here, and then just there are a few other places where there seem to be some nicks on it. So you might want to take a close look at the figure before you purchase it, just to make sure that there aren't really any kind of major paint errors or anything. And then one other area where, like, some of the joints, like down here on his feet, you can kind of, I don't know how well it sees, but you can almost see it looks like maybe some type of green paint coming through on his ankle joints. So But overall, I really like the look of the figure. And then he's got he's on his mask, he's got these big blue metallic eye goggles. And then another thing I like is like this front piece on his chest for his costume is actually the bottom part is actually a soft rubber type material, so it doesn't prohibit the movement of his ab crunch. And yes, he does have an ab crunch, so that's really nice. So for an accessory, this figure comes with a miniature Atomica figure. If you're not familiar with the storyline, the Forever Evil storyline, Atomica is basically Johnny Quick's girlfriend. She's a female version of Adam, basically, and so her power is to shrink down to miniature size. So they've given us basically a mini figure. It's not really... figure is kind of a broad word. This basically has no articulation at all. It's got a little plastic stand that her feet are glued to, so it's not removable. And like I said, there's no articulation at all. For the small size, though, it's got some pretty good details on the face and everything. So it's not bad looking. It's just you can't do much with it other than stand it next to the figure. It would have been maybe kind of cool if they'd made it some way where like she could sit on his shoulder somehow. Usually in the comics it seems like she's always standing on his shoulder, so it might have been kind of cool if they'd made some way where she could stand on his shoulder. But as it is, basically you can just stand it next to the figure, and that's about it. As for the stand, like I said, it's not really removable. The feet are glued onto it. If you really wanted to take it off, you could pull it off. But then the figure would definitely not stand on its own, or at least not very well. So Quick here comes in about 6.75 inches tall from the top of his head. However, if you count the tips of his lightning bolts, which extend out a little bit past his head, then he actually comes closer to about 7 inches tall. And then the Atomica figure stands at just about 2 inches tall, maybe a little bit taller. If you count the stand itself, then it's just a little bit over 2 inches. Some size comparison. Here he is next to the new 52 version of the Flash. He stands with his pointy helmet and lightning bolts. He's actually a little bit taller than Flash. For articulation, I really like what DC Collectibles has done with this figure. Now, one thing I do want to caution is like was noted with like the Batman Arkham Origins figures, these joints can come, when you first take it out of the packaging, the joints on the figure can be kind of tight, so you want to be careful. Some of the joints can be delicate, so you don't want to push or pull too hard on them and snap them or anything like that. So just go easy. You might want, if you've got really tight joints, you might want to take a hairdryer to it or use warm water or something like that to get them loosened up. But for the most part, the articulation on this figure is really good. Now the head's just on a ball joint, and he's kind of looking down. You can't really get the head to look up any, but he does have some down motion, and then he can look left and right really good. Arms are attached to a standard, the shoulders are a standard ball hinge joint, so he's got pretty good rotation. Again, this chest piece is, the ends of it are soft plastic, so as you're rotating it, it doesn't really prohibit the movement because it's just a soft rubber type material. He can stick his arms out good. He's got the bicep swivel, and then he's got a single joint at the elbow, but he can bend his elbow pretty good. And then he's got wrist swivels, and then he's also got hinges on his wrist. So he's got up and down movement with the wrist as well, which is nice. And then, as I mentioned before, he's got an ab crunch, which works really well, so he can look back pretty good. And again, because this chest piece is soft rubber, it really does not prohibit the movement at the ab joint. Now, it does stick out a little bit when you have him looking back, but it doesn't prohibit the movement, which is nice. And then he can also bend forward, and again you see that rubber piece doesn't really affect the movement at all. So I really like how they've done that, and both on the front and the back. He's also got swivel at the waist, and then he's got the ball joints at the leg, so he can do the splits really good. He can do his leg forward pretty good, and out and back pretty good. He's got the thigh swivel, and those joints tend to be a little bit tight, but he does have the swivel there. And then he's got the double jointed knees, so he can get pretty good bend at the knees, allowing you to get him in some good running positions. And then he has ankle pivots and hinges there, so he's got the up and down movement on the foot, and he's got basically good ankle pivot. Okay, so that does it for my review. Overall, I really like this figure. Besides just a few nicks on the paint and everything, I think this is a near perfect figure. The articulation makes this figure really nice. I mean, DC Collectibles has always been known for sculpts and paint apps and such, but you know, they've really been stepping it up a notch with articulation recently, and this figure really they've done a nice job with it. You can get him in good running poses, unlike, you know, the new 52 Flash figure. Unfortunately, you know, you can just get him in some really good poses with this one. So if you're a fan of the Crime Syndicate or the Forever Evil storyline, then I think you'll definitely want to pick this one up. As I mentioned before, it, along with the Owlman figure, which is the evil version of Batman, is hitting comic and specialty shops now. And then I believe Deathstorm, which is the evil version of Firestorm, should be hitting later this month. And then the remaining three, Ultraman, Superwoman, and Power Ring, will be hitting next month. And from what I've seen, it looks like all the figures in this assortment should have pretty good articulation. So be sure to check back. Probably tomorrow we'll have the Owlman review up. And until next time, I'll check you later.